How you guys doing? Good, good. So you obviously notice the big guy's not here today, right? Our good friends in Brighton that help us with the food pantry, help us with our Summerfest that we did. They did the cooking and everything. He's there speaking there today. He had to be there and start speaking at 8:30 this morning. So he's had a really full day, and so my name is John. I'm one of the pastors here as well, and today I'm going to deliver the message. So for the reading, we're going to be in Psalms chapter 3, and I'm going to read it. So the heading, if you have the translation that we use, is the Legacy Standard Bible, and the heading before this psalm is that it's a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. So verse 1, O Yahweh, how my adversaries have become many. Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. But you, O Yahweh, are a shield about me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head. I was calling to Yahweh with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. I awoke, for Yahweh has sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000 of people who are all around have set themselves against me. Arise, O Yahweh, save me, O my God, for you have struck all of my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to Yahweh. So next week we'll go back to 1 Corinthians, but he kind of let me choose what I wanted to do, and right now I have 6 classes left to graduate with my Bible major, and right now I'm studying Hebrew poetry and wisdom literature, and this was one of the psalms that we covered in one of the weeks, but it's also a psalm that I personally have gone to a lot in my life, especially when there's difficulties, when there's trouble, when it's a bad situation. And so I wanted to share that with you guys today because there's a lot of stuff going on in the church. There's a lot of people have had deaths that they've had to deal with, and there's finances and relationship stuff. There's a lot of things going on, and this psalm is a psalm that you can go to that can help encourage you and encourage you to give it to God and help God. So this psalm, I told you at the beginning, right? It's when his son Absalom was after him. So I want to go and give some historical context to this. So we're going to go to 2 Samuel chapter 15. And this is actually the story that leads up to David writing this song. And so you'll get to see some context from it. We're going to do just this end part of verse 12. And it says, and the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. Then an informant came to David, saying, the hearts of the men of Israel have followed Absalom. So David said to all of his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, for otherwise there will be no escape for us from Absalom. Go in haste, lest he overtake us hastily and drive calamity on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword. Then the king's servant said to the king, behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king chooses. So the king went out and all his household with him. So here's the story. The back story to it is Absalom has a sister, and David has many wives, right? So that means he has kids from multiple wives, right? So Tamar is one of his sons from another, not his direct brother, it's a stepbrother, right? And he fancies Absalom's sister. And he devises a scheme and does something he shouldn't do, right? And that made Absalom mad, and he figured out a way, and he killed him. So when all of that came out, David wasn't happy with him. He wasn't happy with Absalom. He sent him away, and it took some years for Absalom to get back around. But as time was going on, he was starting to talk to the people wherever he was, And he's saying, man, if I was king, I would do this for you. And this wouldn't be like this if I was king. And he was getting people to start to like the words that he was saying. His words were sweet, and he was moving the people. So we see here when we get to 2 Samuel 15, he has the people with him. And now he's coming after David, right? And that leads us in to where we are with Psalms 3. That's kind of the backdrop of where David writes this from. So let's cover verses 1 and 2. And we'll read them again. It says, O Yahweh, how my adversaries have become many. Many are rising up against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. So we see in 2 Samuel 15, David gets this information. He just starts doing things, right? Like, got to get out of here. We got to do this. We got to get out before it's too late. And he starts going and devising these things. And what David's doing here is he's crying out to God. He's saying, look at all these enemies that I have. What am I going to do? They're saying that you can't even save me, God. So this psalm is considered, there's two types of psalms. There's psalms that are of praise and thanksgiving to God, and there's psalms that are of lamenting or crying out against enemies of Israel or foes, and that's what David's doing here. He's just kind of trying to figure it all out, right? And he's crying out to God and saying, they're saying you can't even save me, God. And we do this too. Like when those situations hit, whatever that hard thing in your life, losing a job, losing a loved one, family stuff, right? Like we all have family stuff. When those things hit, we tend to just spin and go do what we think, and we don't really go to God with it. And that's kind of what David's doing here. And it's the first thing that I want to bring up, because we do it, David does it here, is our initial response to trouble is for us to do it on our own. Like we go and we run with it, and we just try to figure our way through, right? And we do that. I do that. So Tuesday was our last pastor's picnic at my house. And 3 hours before everyone's going to show up, my well water completely stops working. I have no water in the house anywhere. And there's going to be 30 people at the house in 3 hours, and my wife and I, we're sitting there, we're trying to figure, okay, what are we going to do? How's this going to go? I texted Ernesto, and he's like, do we need to cancel? Do we need to move it? I'm like, no. We had 5-gallon water jugs, and we went to a neighbor, and we filled those up so everyone could still drink water and go to the bathroom and wash their hands. And all. So we had that covered, right? So the immediate, just like David with that fire, we got to get out of the palace. Boom, he gets everyone out of the palace, right? So we covered the immediate one, but then after that, in the time that was remaining, I'm like, man, what's wrong with my well? Like, is my well dry? If my well's dry, that's going to cost a lot of money, right? Yeah. I'm like, well, what else could be wrong? The pump. So we're Googling, like, how much does it cost to replace a pump? Well, it could be up to $2,500. I'm like, that wouldn't be nice either, right? So we're running through this whole thing with the well. And we're doing what David did here, and we're just trying to figure all this out on our own. And I could have just given it over to God and just said, okay, show me, help me take care of this. But I didn't. I was just running it all on my own. And then everyone arrives, and that's on my mind all the way through the whole thing. Like, I'm talking with people, we're eating, we're playing cornhole, which I finally lost a game of cornhole at my house. But I'm still thinking about my well the whole time. I just am. So we do that. But then we get to verse 3, and it's pretty awesome. Verse 3 says, but, and I'm going to stop right there. Remember, if you were here last week or if you listened to the service, Ernesto talked about wanting to write a book about the buts of the Bible. This could be in his book. Because it's a spot where David, he's trying to do this all on his own, and then he says, but you, O Yahweh, are a shield about me, my glory and the one who lifts my head. So It's a transition, and he turns. No longer is he looking at this from just what he can do, but he's looking to God, and he's turning to God. And that's the next step. Our next step is turn to God. He does it right there in verse 3. It's clear as day. He's complaining, not even you can save me, God. And then he's like, no, you can. You're my shield. And it's a great metaphor because we can all envision those words of the page. We can see a shield. We can see protection in front of him. That's what he's saying. God, you are my protection. And you are the one that lifts my head. And that's the turning point. So he's off of trying to do this himself now. And he's looking to God for the situation that he's in, right? And there's 10,000 people trying to find him and kill him. So David gives us a really good template that we can follow when we're going through some of our hard circumstances. And the first thing that we got to do is stop trying to do it ourselves. And we got to turn to God with it. And then let's see what David does next in verse 4. He says, I was calling to Yahweh with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. He prays to God. So he goes from himself to turning to God with this situation, with all these people that are against him. And he calls out to God, and he prays to God. And then it says, he laid down and slept. It blows my mind. We'll talk about that in a sec. So, first thing in a bad situation, we try to do it ourselves. Then we turn to God. The third step is that we need to pray and trust God with it. We just need to trust God with it. And it's not always an easy thing, right? Because we get in the way of that. Just like my silly example of the well, I was just 100% under my own means trying to figure out what to do with it. And I didn't have to do that by myself. Didn't have to. And you'll find out why here in a second. But David then prays to God, and he trusts God. And he trusts God so much that he lays down and goes to sleep. Goes to sleep. There's 10,000 people looking to kill him, and he lays down and goes to sleep. If there were 10 people looking to kill me, I don't know that I would be able to lay down and go to sleep. You know, that's a high level of trust, right? Do you guys agree with that? You have to really be putting your trust in God if you're just going to stop moving, you're not going to hide, you're going to lay down, and you're going to go to sleep, and whatever happens, happens. But David realized something here, is that God's in control, right? If David was going to die in this mountain by these people, it was going to be because God allowed it to happen. And he knew that, so he prayed to God, and he's like, you're my protector, save me. And he ends up doing it, and it's really cool. But this trust, right? Learning to trust God, it's not easy. But it's a process, and it's a process over the time that we're a believer where you start putting trust in God. A lot of times we end up with a circumstance, we have no choice. But all we can do in that moment is trust God with it. And if he sees us through that, we start building on that, and we build more moments through our lives where we put our trust in God and we see how he took us through it. Doesn't mean we come out unscarred or anything like that, but we get to see because we took that to God and prayed to God and got to see what he did and how he helped us through that. And you build those up in your life. And David did as well. So I want to go to, 1 Samuel? 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Just to show you some of David's path and how he got to where he trusted God enough to be able to lay down and go to sleep while he's being hunted. So we're going to be starting in verse 34. And it says, but David said to Saul, your servant was shepherding his father's sheep, and a lion and a bear would come and take a lamb from the flock. And I would go out after it and strike it and rescue the lamb from its mouth. Then it rose up against me, and I would seize it by its beard and strike it down and put it to death. And this is now verse 36. This is Saul talking. He says, your servant has struck down both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has reproached the battle lines of the living God. And then this is where we get it, guys. Verse 37, and David said, Yahweh, who delivered me from the hand of the lion and from the hand of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. So David, while he was shepherding, he realized that God is the one who saw him through killing a bear and killing a lion. And his trust got stronger. Like, okay, I got a bear. Okay, Lord, you just let me not die with a lion. To where now there's this giant, a big giant. And David's like, God will see me through it. And he goes out, right? We know the story. He gets the 5 stones. His sling starts running towards him, hits him right in the middle of the forehead, and he's dead. And God saw him through. So David built those instances like I'm talking about. He had the instance with the bear. He had the instance with the lion. He had the instance with Goliath. He had multiple instances with Saul trying to kill him, and God saw him through that. Those things, when we turn that over to God, they build, and it gets easier for us to trust Him the next time. And it grows our faith, and it grows our trust. So I wanted you to see some progression so you can see we're working through the psalm and what David's doing, but it's because he's done this so many times before that he knows to go and do this with the Lord. So he calls out to Yahweh, and he prays and he trusts Him. And he wakes up. And when he wakes up, he's stoked. Like he's like, Yahweh, you sustain me. I will not be afraid of 10,000 people who are trying to kill me, right? That's verse 6. He has the confidence that he's going to make it through all of this, because he should have been found and killed probably that night. And he wasn't. So we see the steps, right? We try it on our own. We turn to God with it. Then we pray and trust God to see us through it. And this happens for lots of circumstances in our life. Like it can be big things or it can be some small things. I used a silly example of my well. But with my well, I could have easily just turned it over to God and let Him worry about it for me, right? Like I had that option. I didn't do it. And here's the funny thing. So one of our new deacons, Jacob, that we just made a deacon last week, him and his family came over. And all the way through this picnic, he's sitting there talking with me, and he's, John, sure you don't want to go look at it? I'm like, no, it's okay. He's like, you sure you tried everything? No. I'm like, you're here. We're here to fellowship. Let's just fellowship. I'll get it taken care of tomorrow. And he wouldn't stop. Like, he just kept, are you sure? Like, John, let's just go check it for a second. It was like we were starting to pack up, and I'm like, okay, let's go check it out. We go down there, and he takes this cap off of a cylinder and takes my wrench and bangs the cylinder. Whoosh, water just starts flowing through all the pipes. He fixed it in 2 seconds, right? We still had the guy come out, and we put a new solenoid in, so now we should be good for a lot of years. The point I'm trying to make is Jacob signed up to come to the picnic more than a week prior. My problem happened 3 hours before, but Jacob was already coming. God already had it handled. All I had to do was let Jacob do it, right? That's all I had to do. And sometimes that's where we are with our things. Like we don't listen to what's being spoken. And Jacob was speaking and trying to help, and I didn't want to bother him, but I went outside. I'm like, yeah, water's fixed. Jacob fixed my water. I was happy, and it was resolved and we knew what was wrong and all of that kind of thing. But I went through that whole day of a stress that I didn't have to go through. And that I could have just laid it at the Lord and say, Lord, I don't know what's going to happen, but, help me. Help me with this well. And it was already set way before the water stopped running. And that's kind of the point here, like, trust with God. It comes from those moments, and it comes from giving Him the opportunity to do that in our lives. And what that does is we grow closer to Him, and our faith becomes stronger, and our trust in Him becomes stronger. And then the next thing that comes, because there's always going to be another thing, we more quickly fall off of trying to do it ourselves and turning to God with it. That's the point that I want to try to drive home today with this psalm. And David does those things. So then we get to verse 7 and 8. And it says, Arise, O Yahweh, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to Yahweh. So he wakes up and he gives praise and thanks. That's what he does. The final step in these situations, sometimes it's even good to start giving thanks before you're through the situation, because it helps you out, right? Like, those things weigh us down, and they get heavy, and we get burdened, and we get tired. But when you start trying to find the good things and giving thanks, it just is not as bad of a road, right? You don't go through it as hard. And I've done that myself. So that's what we see that David does here. We sang 2 praise songs. And some of it was, I wanted Ricky to do the last song last, because it kind of talked about what David was going through here. It said, when I'm outnumbered, when I have all my enemies, but to continue to praise God. And we see David follows that pattern, right? He's in the minute, on his own, then he turns to God, then he prays to God and trusts Him, and then he gives Him thanks and praise. And you can go back into 2 Samuel if you want, and you can read, or 1 Samuel, and you can read what happens with him and Absalom. I love 1 and 2 Samuel. They're 2 of my favorite books, because I'm like watching a movie while I'm reading it in my head. Like, you can just see everything, and it's really cool. I'm trying to talk Ernesto into us doing 1 and 2 Samuel sometime soon. But yeah, so you build these, but you have to start. And I know there's just a lot of stuff going on in our church, and I thought I would try to share something that I go to, that I've used in my life, and even to the point to where I've taken the psalm and I've inserted my situation into it. Instead of David being hunted by 10,000 people, what my situation is, and asking God for protection and asking God to help. So a good example of me doing this, one of the times of my life that I did this, in 2021, I got COVID, and I got it really bad. And when I went and got tested at they had the drive-through things where you had to go get tested then. When I went and got tested, the guy's like, your test results spiked more than I've ever seen anybody spike ever. And for 4 days, Sarah and I, we were really sick. I mean, intense fevers, like, it felt like we were in a waterbed, because we were just so sweating and so hot and getting sick. And that went for like 4 days. And then at the end of the 4 days, it stopped. So I thought, like, I was going to get better. I thought, okay, it's over. Now I'm going to start getting better from this. And it got to the following Saturday, so it's been a week. And I wake up, and Sarah was gone. She had decided for herself that she was going to go into emergency. And so she went in. And then when I found out where she was and what was going on, I'm like, maybe I should go too. And so I went in, not thinking anything bad. Just that I was thinking, like, I've had food poisoning before. Anybody had food poisoning? And you go to the hospital and you get that IV, and then you just feel yourself come back to life from all of it. That's what I was kind of thinking I wanted. and was hoping for. And they get me into my room in the emergency floor, and like 6 different doctors come in, and they're looking at me. They're asking me questions, and I can't even. I'm trying to answer the first question, and there's like 4 more questions. Like everything I was just processing really slow. And they all left, and a doctor came in, and he's like, John, if you don't let us admit you and let us treat you, you're going to go home and die. And that scared me. I mean, that literally scared me. I texted Ernesto. They were on vacation. I'm like, I'm scared. And I was. It was a moment. They pulled off the road. They prayed for me. And then I did what David did, and I turned to God. When I did that, I just simply told him, my life's yours. Whatever happens. That was me doing what David did. Right? I didn't even get choked up on first service. I'm getting choked up in here. I'm sorry. So I got it back. But that's what I was doing. I turned to him. I called out to him. And I trusted him. And I got the treatments, and I got better, and I'm here. But I was sick for a while. It was like 6 months before I felt like I did before I got COVID. It hung on forever. But that was one of those moments. And there's been other moments like that, and some worse. That's what God wants from us, guys. He wants us to go to him. He wants us to call on him. He wants that relationship with us. You're going to feel that relationship with him by doing this thing when you're in the midst of that and you turn it over to him. Doesn't mean it's fixed. But when you turn that over, you develop a relationship that you get to see what he does. And sometimes some of the things that happen, they're immediate, and they're like, you're like, wow, like, God, you just did that, right? Like we've seen in our own church, baby Azariah, right? We all sat and we prayed for this baby that could have died so many different ways. And we kept praying, and we saw what God did with baby Azariah, just as an example. That's what he wants from each and every one of us. He wants that kind of relationship to where we learn to trust him, and we learn to more quickly go to him when we go through these things. So that is, well, I'm going to close with this. 1 Peter 5:7. It says, cast all your cares upon him because he cares for you, right? So we'll take it to the New Testament. We'll take it to a verse. That's what he wants. It's not that he doesn't know what's going on in our lives. He wants that interaction. He wants us to go to him. He used to bring all the animals to Adam to have him name what the animal was. He knew what Adam was going to name the animal. But he wanted that relationship. That's what he wants from us, guys. So hope it helps somebody today. Let's pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you for loving us, Lord. Thank you for wanting this relationship with us, Lord. And I pray that this psalm will just